that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
A large, hairy creature with arms that hang down beside its, bore down on its sides.
She only happens. And I told him my name, and when I told him the name, he said he was called Cold.
It was not anything from this earth that I'm quite sure of.
You're listening to the Strangeology podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Foran, and this is your place to explore the weird, strange, and unexplained. From cryptids and creatures, the paranormal, aliens and UFOs, forbidden knowledge, ancient mysteries, conspiracies, and more. All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Before we get started today, make sure to follow Strangeology on all of our socials for more content. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Links will be in the show notes as always. And also make sure to sign up for our monthly newsletter over on strangeology.com for updates, shop discounts, and more. And if you're watching this episode on our YouTube channel, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. Like this video, hit the bell icon, you know the drill. And it helps out so much when you do that. It really does. Word of mouth helps get this show out to more people. And, we're trying to take this thing to the next level. We're hitting the ground running. We're doing the grind. And here we are. So make sure to follow me on all the socials. Links are in the show notes. And make sure to stick around after the show for any additional updates, conference announcements that I'll be at, and more. All right, without further ado, today I've got a really cool guest joining me. We've got Mikey Liesner, one of the co-hosts of the Strange Road podcast. If you've ever gone down the rabbit hole of ancient mysteries, high strangeness, UFOs, cryptids, chances are you've come across this show as well, especially if you listen to my show too, right? So Mikey's based out of Ohio. It's a state that's really kind of become infamous for all sorts of weird happenings. And it's probably more weird than people realize. And that's exactly the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to be getting into some local legends, strange sightings, mystery drones, and what it's also like, because Mikey's a fellow content creator, podcaster as well. So we're going to be talking about what it's like in that world. And I'm kind of rambling here, but Mikey and I connected a number of years ago. I think it was at CryptidCon back in 2022, and we've been trying to get some stuff set up here for a while for him to come on my show. I've been on his show before. So yeah, Mikey, I'm glad to finally have you on here today, man. Sometimes it takes a while to get our schedules to align. We're so busy with our lives, but how are you doing today, dude?
Jeff, I'm great, man. Thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome. Yes, we did meet CryptidCon 2022. And I remember buying my daughter some cryptid t-shirts. I got my own t-shirt and some stickers. And we had been following your page when you were doing Instagram during the pandemic, and just loved everything that you were doing and putting out back then. And then how you've kind of evolved what you were doing into, the merch portal and all of the podcasts and short form videos. Much respect to everything Strangeology does. So appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, it's a whole lot of stuff to do, and it seems like there's an infinite amount of things to talk about, which is great. Now, I'm wondering, what kind of inspired you to start the Strange Road? It's you've got Bub, and how has the mission kind of evolved since the early days of the show to where you are at now?
Yeah, when we were kids, Bub and I were just real strange kids, into a lot of UFO topics, obsessed with unsolved mysteries, read voraciously anything we could get our hands on at the library about ghosts, spirits, demonology, really the UFO topic. Huge fan of the X-Files, but back then there wasn't a lot of things like that. I'm a huge fan of Josh Gates and Expedition Unknown and Ancient Civilizations. And some of those interests came much later, but the paranormal has always been a passion of mine. When I was in first grade, I wrote a report how I wanted to be a parapsychologist and go to Duke University. I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that Venkman in the Ghostbusters was a parapsychologist. So I wanted to be cool Venkman and research the unknown. So as I got older, always had a passion for the strange, the high strangeness stories. Really, just been a huge fan of all the Steven Spielberg movies and Goonies, and had an adventurous spirit. And in high school, we played a lot of sports, but acted and did creative things, made jewelry, photography. And my mom was a photographer. And so, when I graduated high school, I was kind of aimless, really in the music scene, going to festivals like Bonnaroo and the local indie scene, and eventually picked up a camera and started shooting video, and started shooting lots of concerts, and then made that a career for now way over a decade of shooting live events and concerts and festivals. But my goal was never to be the best camera guy. I wanted to travel around the country and film interesting stories about the paranormal. I wrote in a journal when I was 19 years old that me and Bub would have our own show one day, and we would travel around and interview people and dig into topics about all these things that I was obsessed with for all these years. And my interests vary so much, which is the Strange Road is kind of in Strangeology as well, is a kind of a perfect umbrella for all things that interest me. So we shot a lot of amazing video over the years for other people. And I always wanted to create something for ourselves, to have our own projects, to create our own content. And, during 2020, the pandemic, we lost all of our live concerts. All of that work went away. And a lot of those opportunities, we did a UFO conference called Dimensions of Disclosure, which is kind of infamous now. That event was the event with David Wilcock and Corey Good, and all of the lawsuits and things that have come out in documentaries about that story with the Gaia TV. So we were on the ground zero when all of that was kind of unfolding. If some of you guys may have followed the blue chickens and some of the things that these folks were claiming, and really blew up into this huge following. But we were the live stream crew for that event, and everybody ended up getting sued after. So that whole thing just fell apart. And that was the summer before COVID. Then boom, we thought we were going to take over kind of that paranormal live event space of live streaming. We had our eyes on Contact in the Desert. We had our eyes on all these different events to help live stream and bring, because there's not a lot of great footage from these talks over the years. And if you look at a lot of these conferences, you won't find much video from the speakers themselves. And so we thought that was a big niche that we wanted to film. And by the way, we could do interviews with all of the speakers and the talent. So a part of going out to these events but we're also capturing interviews for our brand, which before at that time wasn't even the Strange Road yet. But we have met so many people from traveling and filming that by the time we started the Strange Road in 2020, I probably had the first 25 guests already on a list of people I wanted to talk to. And so, I became very obsessed in probably about 2012, 2013 with Native American earthworks and ancient mounds in Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, all through the Midwest. And became obsessed with, stories of giant skeletons being found in burial mounds, and was just absolutely blown away that I didn't know anything about this. And I had been to the Temple of Kukulkan, Chichen Itza. I had been to Stonehenge. I had been to all these ancient places, Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, hiked all the way through, the Verde Valley in Arizona, looking at petroglyphs. I had been all over and didn't realize that these super advanced earthworks and mound structures were in my own backyard. We didn't learn about them in school. I knew about Serpent Mound and had visited that place, but thought all these other structures were just burial mounds from prehistoric Native Americans, and really didn't understand the scope of everything. So that brought me down a major rabbit hole, leading up to starting the Strange Road. So I was kind of going on these adventures and meeting people and interested in all these strange stories that were happening in Southern Ohio. And, in interviewing some of these folks like Jeffrey Wilson. Some of the earlier videos on our YouTube page are with Jeffrey and Clifford Mahooty, indigenous elders and different people that we were, talking about star people. And so the pandemic happened. We started the show. We did 4, probably 6 episodes. And then our production company really took off. And we started gigging and live streaming and all these opportunities because not a lot of people in town were doing that kind of work. And so the show kind of took a back seat. And we ended up having to move to a new office and studio because we had just outgrown all of the gear. We were literally had a cart with all of our gear piled up on. So every day when we walked into the office, we'd have to pull the cart out and have it sit in the hallway so we could actually move around in the office. So we had to move, and we moved to this studio where we shoot the show now. And this is kind of the master control that I'm in. And we ended up, took a while to build out the studio, but we came back in really October of 2022. So, long story short, there's just a lot of, and we can get into some of the things that I kind of went through, when my mother passed away and my daughter was born 10 days apart. My mother passed 10 days later. My first child was born. So I got into this discovery, trying to understand who I really was. And it brought me down this path of kind of from really 2012, getting back in school when I was in my 30s, learning film and production and all the Adobe suites and graphic design and sort of some audio production. And but meanwhile, I'm literally like taking a job as going to Sprint stores and demonstrating these Kyocera waterproof phones, filling up a tube of water and going into a store and throwing a phone in this tube of water to show them, yeah, it's really waterproof. And this is like a side gig while I was in school. But as I was driving around all over Ohio, I was seeing these signs, ancient earthworks, mounds, boom, boom. So on my lunch, I would stop at all these places and was just blown away by the size and scope of some of these places, like the Newark Circle, the Newark Earthwork, or, Site Mound, or some of these really advanced, kind of geometrically aligned to the stars and mathematically perfect, and was just shocked that I had never known that this was in my own backyard. So I got real hooked, and got myself into some of the communities that have events, like Friends of Serpent Mound and the Serpent Mound Star Knowledge folks, which hold events around that area. And slowly, and again, this is all before I started the Strange Road, and started meeting some of those people and going to their events, and eventually was able to, start landing interviews, and then they all became guests on the show. And so now we've tried to help them out with video production and their events, and we've done some live streams, and but that's why it's the Strange Road, because it's been a real strange path to kind of get where to the point where we even started the show was like overwhelmingly synchronistic, and the weird people that would fall in our laps or we would run and come in contact with. And it was just like a really magical time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for the background on how you got started. I mean, we're kind of kindred spirits, right? we both grew up being into weird stuff, UFOs, Bigfoot, strange stories, the unexplained, and all that. And even when I was a kid, I had this thought of maybe having some kind of like a radio talk show type of thing someday. And then lo and behold, I lose my job at the beginning of the pandemic that I had had for the last 13 years doing graphic design, and then I started a podcast, and here we are. But yeah, I definitely wanted to, ask you, what are your thoughts about all of, the mound builder sites in Ohio at Serpent Mound? Obviously, you've had Jeff Wilson on your show a whole bunch of times. I've been meaning to get him booked at some point soon for this show. But like, what do some of the people think? This Paleo Indian culture that's believed to have built these, but there's some other ideas that there might be these giants, these old newspaper articles from the 1800s. The Smithsonian is in on it, covering up the bones. What do you think of all that?
It took me a long time to really dig through all of the even have an opinion, and I still leave all of this very, very wide open, right? Because it is the 1800s. There's no internet, but in a lot of these sites that people will point to in these whether it's in its antiquarian journals. If any of you have ever been on Google Books, you can just go on Google Books and look up the Orient antiquarian journals, and you can keyword giant skeletons, and you can do this with all these old books. And antiquarian journals it was before archaeology was implemented as a field of study. So these folks were called antiquarians, and they were just old school, like Civil War vets and colonels that just had this insane sense of adventure. And a lot of these guys were Freemasons, and which in a roundabout way is why a lot of theories are kind of always debunked when it comes to out of place artifacts like the newer Coley stones, whether it's the giant skeletons. They're heavily discredited by the Ohio History Connection, and specifically Dr. Bradley Lepper, who's the in-house archaeologist, and he's Ohio State University. He really goes out of his way to kind of write articles in the Columbus Dispatch and really poo-poo the people that are looking into some of these things, like Jim Vieira, Hugh Newman, that have written books like Giants on Record about all of the accounts of giant skeleton reports in local newspapers, town hall reports. I mean, it's thousands. We're talking thousands of reports. I could see a few of these reports, but I've read enough myself in official archives, and really when I discovered Jim Vieira was right around the time that I started getting into this. Let me just tell you a story real quick to kind of give you an idea of how I stumbled upon the topic of giants in Ohio. And that's what got me so blown away, is because of how I found this out. So my wife and I, she was probably like 8 months pregnant, and we're like, we just need to go on a hike. We just need to get out into nature. I was looking into all these earthworks and working for this Sprint for Sprint, demoing these waterproof phones. And I said, let's go out to this place I've never been. And it's called Fort Hill. And we go to Fort Hill, and they're giving a tour. And back then, Spruce Hill, Fort Hill, I always mix it up, but this was not open to the public. It was privately owned, and they did 1 or 2 tours a year. So we signed up for this tour, and there's a Ohio Ranger that's giving the tour, and we're going through, and this, they have walled structures around this whole flat top. I mean, it's a hike to get up on top of this. And some people are like, well, is it a fortification? Well, there's no evidence of war. There's no evidence of any battles. And not only that, but there were like these processional gateways through the walls, around in between the walled structures. So you're way up on top of this hill. You have these what seem to be some kind of stone structure fortification, whatever you want to call it, very out of place. And it's so flat up there that it's just one big grass meadow with wildflowers and everything else. And we're going on this tour, and this ranger's amazing. And we get to a spot, and he says, "Does anybody know what this is?" And he's holding this yellow colored rock, and basically says, "Well, this is slag from smelting metal. This is evidence that they know the people up here were smelting copper and nickel and different metals." And I'm thinking, wait, what? I thought that was discovered in, the Middle East and in Europe, where, people were smelting metal. I had no idea ancient people in Ohio were working with metal. Like, boom, mind's blown. The guy hands me the slag. It's in my hand. I'm like, this is absolute evidence that this is happening. This ranger's telling me this isn't some conspiracy. So I'm blown away. And at the end of, in the middle of the tour, they switch out rangers because it's a pretty, long haul. So the rangers swap out, and you have a second ranger that comes in and finishes the tour. So right before the second ranger comes, the first ranger starts talking about, there's all kinds of legends about these places and the earthworks and what they found. And then he stops himself and says, "Well, you know what? I probably shouldn't talk about that." And I'm sitting there going, hold on a second. What are you about to say? And then the second ranger comes in. That guy takes off. So we finish this tour with the second ranger. We're going around. It's amazing, beautiful. And all of a sudden, we hike all the way down to where our cars were. And there's that first ranger. And my wife comes up to him and says, "Hey, you can't do that. You just can't, prime us up and then walk away like that. Come on, it's just us. Like, what were you going to say up there? What is this, these legends about this place?" And he says, "Well, have you ever heard of the Nephilim?" And I said, "You mean like the Bible, giants from the Bible?" "Well, yeah, I have." He said, "Well, people believe that there were giant people and giant skeletons that were found in all of these mounds in Ohio." I was like, "What do you mean? Like, how many?" He goes, "Apparently there's like hundreds of these reports." And I said, "There's no way. There's no way that I did not know about this in my own backyard. I'm into all these things, and I'm into ancient civilizations." At this point, I had been to Chaco Canyon. I had been to the Temple of Kukulkan, Chichen Itza, a whole bunch of Mayan places. The Verde Valley, had gone through National Historic Petroglyph Park and saw the aliens and weird beings and petroglyph walls and had documented that. And so I'm just blown away. I'm like, there's no way this ranger has just told me this. So I just become completely upset. Sure enough, I start going through archives, town halls, newspaper reports, and I start finding these reports of giant skeletons, 7 to 9 foot tall skeletons that are being pulled out. Not only that, but realizing that the Smithsonian themselves has actually written field reports about this. Okay. And I discovered Jim Vieira. Jim Vieira is out in the Massachusetts and on the eastern seaboard. And Jim is doing his own research. And this is way before the Giants on Records TV show on the History Channel. Jim at this point just has a Facebook group. I joined the Facebook group, and every day Jim is posting articles from all over the country. We talk about the red-haired giants and Lovelet Cave, all the really well-known kind of giant stories. And he had those too, but he had ones all over Ohio, West Virginia, but also, giants with double rows of teeth and these
six fingers,
yeah, all of those things, and them being connected to these stone chambers that you see in New England, but in the Midwest they're connected with earthworks and mounds. And I just started going, I can't believe the volume that this guy is uncovering. And so, Dr. Bradley Lepper and these archaeologists, they come, well, it's all hoaxes. Of course, back then there were so many P.T. Barnum types. The biggest example of a fake giant is the Cardiff Giant. And a lot of people that aren't in the initiated about giant research will point to that as, no, the Cardiff Giant's 100% fake. It's been debunked. It's completely garbage. And Dr. Bradley Lepper and all these guys point to this one article. Yes, he was that was basically P.T. Barnum had bought the Cardiff Giant. Like P.T. Barnum himself is wrapped up into that whole story. But the Smithsonian and themselves, for example, a great example that I like to talk about is right here in Ohio is the Miamisburg Mound. Now, the Miamisburg Mound is probably like 70 feet tall. You can still climb up it today, but it looks over the Little Miami River and it's way up on top and it's magical. I mean, you can see this whole river valley from the top of this mound. And even when you're not on the mound, you're still way up, so you can see over everything. This is a magical place. I mean, I think it was close to 100 feet tall at one point. They had dug down into the center. A lot of times, these mounds would get dug up. There was no best practices. Archaeology didn't even exist when a lot of people were digging these up, and a lot of them were like the dentist down the street that was a Freemason that was just interested in you know, the lost tribe of Israel story, and you know, the Masons were trying to prove that, you know, these lost civilizations and these like Masonic cultures existed that had high technology. And then, you know, of course, the Mormons were completely obsessed with, you know, the lost tribe of Israel, which is a part of, you know, the golden tablets that were found in a mountain in New York. A lot of people don't realize that the Mormons were actually, their main hub foundation was in Ohio. And so, you know, a lot of their mythology and stories are connected to Ohio earthworks and mounds and New York and so forth. So, you know, there are plenty. What they like to do is they like to take, you know, these lost tribe of Israel and, they'll discredit somebody like Scott Walter, for example, who's researched the Newark Holy Stones. And for those of you that don't know about the Newark Holy Stones, it's a out of place artifact. The Bat Creek Stone is a good example. The Coal Stone. These are all stones that appear to have ancient writing on them. Some of them are elaborate, but the Newark Holy Stone are absolutely unique compared to the other ones. And I have this little pamphlet here that's sold in the Johnson Humerick House Museum in Coshocton, Ohio, and you can go to this day. You can go to the Johnson Humerick House Museum and see the Newark Holy Stones. They're under a glass case. They're right there. The originals, and the original journal, Ancient America, was this magazine that came out for years and years. It started in the 1800s, but they broke this story about the Newark Holy Stones first, and wrote up this article about John Wyrick, who is this Freemason from the Newark area, and he had discovered basically there's a few different stones that are, and I can show you pictures from this, but it was from 1860 to 1867 is when John Wyrick had found the completion of the stone. They were in different areas too, but basically there's a keystone, and this is the keystone, which is I think why Wyrick and his friends were very interested in this. This is the keystone here.
Interesting.
So on the keystone, the front of it says the Holy of Holies, and then this one is King on Earth here.
Okay. And
Now,
that's in Hebrew, right?
All four sides of the keystone have an inscription. This right side is the word of the Lord. Yes, the word of the Lord. Go back a little bit. There you go. And then the one on the back is the laws of Jehovah. This one is the laws of Jehovah. Okay. So when you look at these in person, they are impressive. I'm not a geologist. I'm not an anthropologist, archaeologist, but boy, to be faked, which is, the story of the Newark Holy Stones isn't just about the stones, but it's about John Wyrick, and he's this Freemason that's trying to prove the lost tribe of Israel, and in which I think Wyrick and some of those guys did believe that story, but he wasn't obsessed to the point where he was trying to fit this into that story. Now that's how he's discredited. is because they always want to use this lost tribe of Israel belief to discredit anything that's in Ohio. And so, the sandstone box is a really interesting piece. So the one that I just showed you there is the keystone. This is an artifact that is known as the Decalogue stone. This is the Decalogue stone. And there are several inscriptions here, which I can read them to you guys and kind of show you there. But, and again, you can see these in person. Now, the Decalogue stone, interesting enough, is contained in a sandstone box that's completely perfectly carved to house this stone. Goes inside a little tomb. Imagine a little box completely smoothed out to perfectly fit the Decalogue stone inside. And so these were found in these earthworks near Newark, Ohio. The Decalogue stone reads, the translation given by Reverend J.W. McCarthy, Moses, his words appear at the head of the image, so over top of the image, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of servants. I am Jehovah thy God. There shall not be thee gods other than me before. Thou shalt not make thyself a graven image. Thou shalt not bow down to them or worship them. It's the 10 Commandments. So the 10 Commandments were written on this stone. And it's been heavily debated, back and forth. And, Dr. Bradley Lepper and all these folks throughout time, have really piled on this story. It's a fake. It's known as a fake. I'm not so sure about that. I went there myself a few years back just to see it and photograph it. And, I was by myself, and the lady down at the front desk, there's nobody there. Like, absolutely no. I'm like, this is my chance. That American Journal, I wonder, because they have photocopies of the original story of John Wyrick, and you can find these copies of the story that's written in the Ancient America Journal. And so I'm like, well, they have photocopies. I wonder if they have the original. So I go downstairs, and I asked this lady, hey, you got the original American Ancient America Journal? She said, well, yeah, we do actually. I go, oh, wow, really? I would love to see that if I could. She goes, oh, no, you'll never be able to see that. I go, really? Why is that? She's like, well, it's in the basement. I said, do I need to get some kind of permission to schedule ahead of time to get down there? Like, I want to see this thing. And she goes, no, it would take an act of Congress for you to get down there and see that original American. And I thought, why the secrecy? Why would it be that difficult for someone like me that's interested in this stuff to be kept? Because the photocopies you cannot read. They're garbage. It's a terrible copy. So I'm sitting there going, I can't even read this story. You have this display. I can't even read the story fully, which, later on I got a chance to read the digital version, but I thought, wow, how cool would it be to have an original copy from I think it was the 1870, in the 1870s when that article came out. No, it would take an act of Congress.
That's crazy.
So these kind of things that I've come in contact with and the stories that you hear, there's a lot of things that add up, especially with the Ohio History Connection and some of the things that have been made aware of how some of the sites are handled and digs that have happened where artifacts were recovered. Like in Serpent Mound, they dug a trench for a water line, and it was 100 yards, and the whole trench uncovered over 100,000 artifacts.
Oh, wow.
These artifacts were put in a box. And the only reason that we know that these artifacts or that dig ever happened is because a master's student in the mid-90s discovered these artifacts and wrote her thesis, her master's statement thesis about the uncovering of these artifacts. And her whole conclusion is, why am I the one writing about these artifacts? Why has no one ever researched them? They've never been cleaned up. They've never been analyzed. They've never been scanned. They've never been written about. There was one other guy that was I can't remember his name, but he was from maybe the Peabody Museum or maybe the former director of Ohio History. It's Ohio History Connection now, but it used to be Ohio Historical Society. And so, the guy that used to run that kind of got tricked into admitting that those artifacts were there. So there's a huge battle of this constant struggle of trying to discredit people like Thomas Johnson and Jeffrey Wilson and Ross Hamilton, who Jim Vieira and Hugh Newman, and a lot of these guys that were giants researchers all give homage to Ross Hamilton. Ross Hamilton from Mason, Ohio is what I call the OG giant researcher. I've interviewed him several times. I've spent time with him in his home. I met him going back years ago with a talk that him and Jeffrey Wilson did together. About Jeffrey's more of your, like, if I don't have the receipts and the evidence, I'm not going to talk about it. And Ross has more of, I would say, a spiritual philosophy. And a lot of his information comes through like meditation and the ether. And, he had a guru in India and he gets a lot of his information from the ethereal world. And so you have a lot of people over the years that have, always given their props to Ross Hamilton when it comes to and he called them the tall ones. And lately you've been hearing some UAP UFO discussions about these groups called the tall ones that are starting to come out through whistleblowers and so forth. So, man, like I uncover this little thing, that little thing, and over 10 years, there's things that just add up where I have to scratch my head and say, there's something to this. The hundreds of articles alone that I've read in town hall reports, and I almost forgot the Miamisburg Mound story that I kind of was rambling there a little bit. But back to the Miamisburg Mound real quick. There was an 8 to 9 foot tall skeleton that was reported. The Smithsonian was called out. The Smithsonian wrote in their own field journal that the townspeople had put this thing up on display at the town hall, and hundreds of people were in line viewing this giant. And it's written about in their field journal. The Cincinnati Enquirer wrote about it. The Dayton Daily News wrote about it. All of the Ohio, it picked up and went all over the wires of that, whatever the AP News was back then. The Smithsonian themselves wrote about this. It was on display. Everybody had written about this giant and the artifact, copper gorgets, very advanced jewelry, these like breastplates like you see the Egyptians wear. These are really common to be found in these earthworks with giant stone tools. The anomalies go on and on and on, Jeff. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you for 5 hours about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy when you look into it. A long time ago, I did a couple research-based episodes for the show, which if you're new to the show, go back and listen to them. But it's like part 1, part 2, tracing the trail of ancient giants.
And Jeff, I could go on and on about this stuff. We could literally have a 5-hour podcast and it wouldn't even scratch the surface on not only just the earthworks and the mounds and the giants, but how UFOs and cryptids and portal areas are all connected with, the area of Serpent Mound and other these places that are, high strangeness locations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's strange that there's so much of an effort to, discredit a lot of this stuff. And certainly there are made up stories, right? And we have to take that into account when researching this stuff. But when someone as prominent as like Graham Hancock, who is obviously wildly discredited by the academic community, gets banned from even going to Serpent Mound, you got to wonder, like, what's going on there.
You brought it up. I tried not to. This is a hot button topic. We were kind of right in the middle of all that unfolding. Jeffrey Wilson was on episode 6 of Ancient Apocalypse season 1, which was the episode they covered Serpent Mound. Graham Hancock, we had all of the behind the scenes screen captures of emails that they had written him, approved filming, Netflix crew hired. You know what crew production? You need a director, you need cam ops, you need audio engineers. You got a crew of people. You're not going to Ohio to film at Serpent Mound unless you have permission.
Right.
So they have all these people coming in. Jeffrey Wilson's hosting, Graham and the crew. They get there the morning of, and the gate is closed. Graham looks at his phone and sees this email, basically breaking down, because of your beliefs about the history of this place, you are not welcome here, and filming has been disapproved. Not only that, not only were they not allowed to film, they weren't even allowed to go on the property.
Wow.
Okay. So they had to film all the interviews at Jeffrey Wilson's house, which Jeffrey lives right next door to Serpent Mound. Convenient for someone that's obsessed completely with Serpent Mound.
For sure.
And so, there was a lot of effort even afterwards when the controversy kind of broke leading up to the release of Graham's show. You had employees that were being lied to. They were being told one thing. And because a lot of people were coming there just to see what the heck happened. And they were fed a line to give people at the parking lot booth. And so it's one of the big reasons why I think the Ohio History Connection is the corporation that basically banned Graham and would not allow him to film. They are a corporation. They don't have anything to do with the government of Ohio. They're funded by very, very big donors. I'm not going to mention any names because I'm not trying to get a whole lot of enemies just yet, but there are some things that I've been forced to speak out against here in the last year, and I'm probably gonna, because our name's starting to get thrown into things that are being written in archaeology journals, with interviews we've done with Jeffrey Wilson and his group, Friends of Serpent Mound, and like I mentioned earlier, the Serpent Mound Star Knowledge folks, which, by the way, Friends of Serpent Mound was started because OHC, or the corporation Ohio History Connection, could no longer afford to keep up the property. So the local people bound together and mowed the grass, cut the tree limbs, raked the leaves, kept the park going for many years when OHC was broke. So Ark of Appalachia, for many years after Friends of Serpent Mound, essentially had rescued this place, started by Bev, Delcy, Jeffrey Wilson, Delcy's mother, Bev. She owns a lot of the property around Serpent Mound, and her husband was, a big part of like starting all of these events. And it was literally community outreach to save this amazing place. And so it wasn't for the locals like Tom and Terry from House of Tom and Terry's Alternate Universe Rock Shop and House of Fake Hops. If any of you guys ever go to Serpent Mound, you got to go to Tom Johnson's Rock Shop first. I always send people there first. It's in Locust Grove, 7 miles down the road. Tom will tell you exactly every place to go in every strange area, and will give you the whole backstory of everything you want to know. And he'll be there. You show up, Tom is always at the rock shop. There's a giant Sasquatch carving of an old tree, a mother Sasquatch and a child Sasquatch, and they have a huge, you can't miss it, it's a huge eagle with a serpent in its claws. So 2 big giant tree carvings. And so, they have totally turned their back on these people, these communities. They rescued the place. Now OHC has done everything in their power to cancel the ceremonies that used to be done there. The Serpent Mound Star Knowledge folks in particular have brought indigenous cultures from the Maori in New Zealand to South American cultures to tribal people in the Hopi and the Zuni all over the world. Indigenous people from Australia, and you name it, the Dogon have been there. because they bring these folks in and then they take them to Serpent Mound and they all do these beautiful ceremonies for years. The lighting of the serpent on the winter solstice is an event that Friends of Serpent Mound did, where they luminaries and they light the whole outside of the serpent and light it all up. Canceled. OHC took over. When they're pushing for World Heritage Site, everything got taken over from Arc of Appalachia.
Yeah.
And the guys that used to run it, man, they would let us film after hours. We filmed interviews at Serpent Mound. You can't film there. You can't get approval. Even PBS cannot get approval to film.
What the heck? That's crazy.
Why, Jeff?
Yeah.
Would they not want anyone filming there? Because they can control the narrative. They can control the history and the flow of information, period.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's, people always ask why, well, why would, all these institutions want to cover up something that would be such a huge discovery and a new understanding of our origins, the history of humanity, this lost chapter that Graham Hancock always talks about, and yeah, it's a narrative control. And I think there's some stuff in there that talks about who we are as a people that might, the powers that be might not want the regular layperson to really know about, It's
Right.
a system of control, I think. But yeah.
And the academics use all the same tactics in cancel culture that you see on the highest level. You're a racist. You're a cultural appropriator. People like Ross Hamilton and some of these folks. Terry Rivera she's Native American. She's from from south of the border indigenous bloodlines. Terry, as she's the grandmother that has brought all these cultures and indigenous people from all over the world. And, they call her a racist, a cultural appropriator. People like Ross Hamilton, you're not allowed to research Serpent Mound. You're not allowed to talk about it. You're not even allowed to be interested in it. We've been called racist. We've been called cultural appropriators for doing an event that talks about archaeoastronomy at Serpent Mound. Ross Hamilton and us is like, hey, you guys don't even know anything about me. First of all, we've been written up in archaeology journals recently, very, very recently. And, there will be a response. I'm at the point where there has to be a response. And the only thing we're trying to do is give these, and you want to call them alternative researchers, non-mainstream, because a lot of the folks like Jeffrey Will, he's not an archaeologist. He's got a physics background. He used to work for NASA. He's got a LiDAR background. He's got a scan. The guy's a scientist. You put his massive brain on any subject that he's passionate about, he's going to find all the receipts. The problem is you can't debate somebody like Jeffrey or even Thomas for that matter when it comes to a lot of these things because they don't have the historical background and haven't done the research. Now, you can be an archaeologist, but you might not have been digging into the Peabody Museum archives in Harvard like Jeffrey has for the last 6-7 years, which is, his research with the Serpent Mound giant and the postcard that was found in that collection. And you can check out the full video on our YouTube page. It's one of the first videos we ever put out is basically there's a skeleton and a postcard from the 1800s that says 7-foot tall skeleton at Serpent Mound. And that's all it says. And he's like, whoa, what is this? So Jeffrey, being Jeffrey, goes into this absolute crazy deep dive and finds an artifact that's in the photo and says, I'll bet you we could measure it based off of how large that artifact is. So you know what he does? He finds the artifact. He finds all the documents. He gets the measurement and then scales the photograph to the size of the artifact. And then basically uses that as a scale and says, yeah, it's actually probably larger than 7 feet tall because the shin bones have been lopped off. That skeleton was 7 feet tall and it was missing some of the bones. So that's all that video was about. It wasn't about claiming that giants were real and there's this whole fantastical ancient civilization and it's all Atlanteans and aliens and all these things. No, it was just, here's a postcard that we found. This is the caption. This is the size according to the artifact. And it's all very research scientific, and it's not claiming anything. But then you get this video gets used as an example of how these groups are pseudoscientists and they're racist and they're this and they're that. It's like, man, we're just interested in this. We're
Yeah.
not allowed to look into it.
Yeah. It's, you know, such a such a bummer thing. I don't know the better words to describe it, but
It makes me angry.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Why can't we ask questions? You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. Well, I wanted to shift gears a little bit here.
Sure.
And we were talking a while ago, you know, when the show was on break, and you reached out to me and you wanted to talk about a drone sighting back when all of the stuff was going on over in New Jersey and the surrounding states. And well, it seems like I've been hearing recently that there's still some strange phenomena going on up in the skies, even though, you know, the the press secretary for the White House came out a couple weeks after, you know, Trump was sworn in, and they're like, oh, it was just FAA approved stuff, nothing to see here, which is clearly there's more than that going on, I'm sure. But, you know, what happened? What did you see?
So there's and this did not make news anywhere national. It made major local news in the county that Bub and I grew up in, Mercer County. Let me just lay the groundwork of this happened in late January over a period. Really, I've been told a month, but the ramp up was about 3 solid days that this all unfolded in a major way. In about late December, as the New Jersey drone thing was kind of petering out a little bit in the news, and, you know, around the holidays, people are busy, you know, by early January, the New Jersey drone story had really cooled off. But in that moment is when the drones and strange craft started being seen in Mercer County, Ohio. And they were doing really low flies. And these are farmers, these are working people, factory workers. Specifically, they were hanging around farms. More than not were egg producing farms, massive chicken farms that were producing eggs. And your spidey senses might already be going off. There's been a lot in the news about, you know, we're kind of through it now, but, you know, the last few months, there's been a massive shortage of eggs. Egg prices went through the roof. And this is one of the reasons why I believe the egg prices that nobody wanted to talk about were so expensive and started to kind of get in the news a little bit, is because Mercer County and Darke County, Ohio, are the top egg producing counties in Ohio, but also the United States. Now, these egg farms are highly advanced, massive buildings that are computer programmed with AI. And so, you know, you have one building, one farm that might have 1 million birds in it. So there's many of these chicken farms all over Darke County and Mercer County. And so probably in, you know, early January, late December, you started hearing around the town, and the folks that I interviewed were filming them on their phone. It wasn't on the community's radar, but a lot of people were seeing weird things in the sky that looked like drones. And there's the only reference is New Jersey. And I'm like, well, we're in Mercer County, Ohio. Why would there be drones here? So nobody really took it seriously, but a few people started filming them every single night in the sky around their farm. And I did talk to them. We did a whole episode about this and did a really deep dive. So if I'm going to give you guys the cliff notes, but that episode of Strange Happenings was, a few months back. And so in January 26th, which was a Sunday, or the 27th, is when a whole bunch of folks started seeing massive drone swarms flying over their farms. When I say massive, I say 50 to 80 drones at a time were coming in formation. Now, the gentleman that I interviewed was a former military, very well respected in the community, didn't want his name used, but I recorded and then transcribed an interview and basically read back what he encountered, along with many other farmers that had 4 or 5 of them sitting up 100 feet above their farm. They're right there, and they're huge. They're the size of limousines, some of them. They're the size of VW buses. Nobody could figure out where they were coming from. They were literally coming. The first night there was a get together, some kind of a fish fry or chicken fry, where the farmers all started talking. Hey, have you seen this? Yeah, well, actually I did. I saw that. And then a lot of the guys like, oh, okay, whatever. And the very next night it would happen at their farm. Oh my gosh, you were right. I'm seeing these things too. So it starts going around in this Facebook group called Homegrown Tones. It's a really interesting idea that these guys had. They take scanners and then integrate the technology into audio form and text transcripts, and then feed those transcripts. They do a live stream on YouTube where you can listen to police scanner, fire scanners, and kind of understand what's all going on in the area. But it'll post in text to this Facebook group. So you started having all of these scans coming through the police stations of people calling the police over these 3-night period, calling the sheriff department, and Homegrown Tones was right there reporting live all of these reports coming in about these giant drones, super advanced. Some of them didn't make noises. They would come in at dusk almost every single night, right before the sun comes down. You're talking 5:30 p.m. And then there's 3 hours where these things are all over the place, dude. And you've got, like I said, you've got really reliable folks. And so I started calling friends. I had heard about it by Monday. I, did a couple off the record interviews with friends. And they're like, hey, you need to go talk to Chris Niekamp. Chris Niekamp is a former sheriff. He's a 4-H advisor. He's a hunter. He's an upstanding citizen in the community. And Chris started a Facebook group that was Mercer County, Darke County, UAP drone sightings, where people started posting videos. Thousands of people started joining this Facebook group, Jeff.
Yeah.
And posting. It's still there. You can go and look at these videos right now. It's still there. You had people in Mendon, Ohio. They had a plasma. This woman filmed a plasma ball.
Right.
That was wild, man. And I couldn't believe. So I ended up getting my nephew who lives in St. Mary's, and I got on the road probably Tuesday night. We got there a little late in the game. And by Tuesday night, the drones were everywhere. I couldn't get back in time enough. I had a bunch of camera gear, audio equipment. We were going to do interviews, and then we did a podcast episode and I collected all this information, and we did a show. And so, we had actually coming into St. Mary's to pick up my nephew. I see this big giant light, and it's kind of just hovering. I'm like, that's not a star. That thing has just been sitting there. It's not a plane. It's not coming near me. It's not moving away from me. What is this thing?
Yeah.
And I'm tracking it all the way in. I pick him up. I go, dude, what is that in the sky? What is that? And we're like, I don't know. So he jumps in the car. We start driving towards this thing. We're driving. Next thing you know, we're all the way out near Salina, Ohio, out in the country. And this thing's just slow. Finally, once we get to a gap, I go, man, this thing's going to disappear on us. I jump out. I pop out the sticks. I pop out the camera, and I start trying to track this thing. Now, I don't have super long lens, a super massive zoom lens. I've got a little camcorder that's got like 120x zoom. And so I'm getting in there, but this thing's moving, right? So you operate a camera, it's hard to catch that focus. People always say, well, there's so many cameras now. You'd think we would have all this UFO evidence of cell phones and this and that. The lights are this big. They're tiny. And to try, as a professional camera operator, to try to follow a little light in the sky and find that focus as it's either moving away from you, because the only way to do it is to manually find the focus on these big zoom lenses. And it's possible, but even someone like myself with a really advanced tripod, a really advanced camera rig, it's very, very difficult to film these things. And especially with your iPhone, because it's just a little tiny dot in the sky. Now, there were videos of these drones, these big ones, flying low, and you could see those really, really well.
Yeah.
But by the time we had gotten there, an Army, a Black Hawk helicopter, and a C-17 aircraft was deployed from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and they were jamming the signal, but it finally appeared. And next thing you know, all the drones, boom, they go up to high elevation. The Black Hawks and the C-17 that third night scared them off. So by the time we got there, we could see them everywhere, man. They were very difficult to film, though. So we go through, and next thing you know, I'm hearing there's avian bird flu all over these farms. They just killed 1 million birds. Now it's 5 million. Now it's 10 million. By Thursday, it was 20 million. I think it was 50 between Darke County and Mercer County. All of the farmers believe that bird flu was being sprayed on their farms from the drones. That's why we lost all the eggs, and eggs spiked in prices, and no one would talk about it. Not even Trump. Because you had 2 of the top producing egg counties in the country being hit by some sort of attack. I don't know. I can't prove this. I'm just telling you what the people that I interviewed, when the bird flu showed up, the same exact time these drones showed up, you had reports of spray coming out of the back of these things. I saw a video where the moon was behind it, and you could see this halo effect, a diffusion effect of something coming out of this thing and lighting up this kind of foggy halo through the moonlight. And that's what I was told. Film them when the moon's behind, if you can see that spray. Dude.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. That's so sketchy. That's so sketchy. I mean, that also makes me think, I mean, I also heard about people seeing, something coming out of the drones elsewhere, but it also makes me think about the weird the mystery fog that showed up around the same time, like early January, that was like rolling into different cities all over the country. And I got
sick.
I got a big community guidelines violation for even talking about that on social media. And I was just like, oh, maybe there's something to this, but I guess I can't talk about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so wild. Yeah. Yeah, so obviously there were a whole bunch of theories about these drones, and you mentioned like the plasma ball, the whole plasmoids thing got kind of pretty well talked about for sure. There was that one video, I think it was in like Arizona. I think it was like near Phoenix, and someone was filming this light ball up in the sky, and then they see a drone. You could tell it was a drone. It was some kind of conventional thing that went up to it, and then it just dropped out of the sky. Like it got taken out by this plasmoid. It's like, what's going on? And we still don't know exactly what happened, but clearly it seems like there may have been some other kind of intentions happening, if this was our tech or what. And you had politicians, the sheriff had to make a statement. Like, this built up so much that Bernie Moreno, the brand new senator of Ohio that just won in November, had to come out and release a statement. They were getting so much pressure on the there's basically like a federally run farmers association that's in every rural county in America. And the FSA, I want to say, they were told, get this,
that the Department of Agriculture, which by the way didn't even have a head at this point, that the head of the department, he had not been appointed by Trump yet. The Department of Agriculture was told to tell the FSA offices that PETA was responsible for the drones. They blamed it. They tried to blame it on PETA. 100% a real memo that came out. I saw the memo. I've interviewed people. They were told this by the Farmers Association offices that PETA was the one responsible.
So interesting.
It's so bizarre.
Weird.
And none of it makes sense. But, you know, the Congress people, the sheriff, they all had to make statements. They pushed Trump to like investigate it. There was a lot of people super worried. I mean, you can't insure animals. Now you can insure crops. But what I found was if you have all these chickens, these farmers, dude, they're screwed. You know how long it takes to get from chick to chicken, and say what you want about, you know, factory farming and this and that. I'm not a big fan of it myself. But, you know, where I grew up, that's just, you know, that's how people make their living. And there's these giant farms, and every single big farm got hit with bird flu. And not only that, but they made them quarantine and euthanize every single bird. The farmer's like, hey, I can contain this. You don't have to kill my whole flock. They're like, nope, you're ordered to kill all million birds. And by the end of it, it's like 25 million, 30 million birds between the two counties.
Yeah. That's
unbelievable.
That's insane. That's insane. Wow. Yeah. And we wonder why. I mean, obviously there's a lot of factors as to, you know, why the price of eggs and poultry has gone up. And do you remember, was it year 2024 or 2023? I can't remember now, but it seemed like every week there was like a new food processing plant that had caught on fire.
Sure.
And it was like one after the other. There's just like tons of them. And then there's like news articles that come out. They're like, oh no, this is like a regular thing that happens. Like what? Really? Really? I don't know. I guess. Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of weird stuff going on out there, man. For sure. For sure.
Yeah. And you know, I've, a Mi'kmaq elder from Maine friend that I met at that UFO disclosure I talked about earlier. We interviewed him. You know, he kind of had to go in hiding a little bit for some of the things that he was coming out with, and kind of had to take himself out of public view. And we actually witnessed some of this stuff go down, and we're kind of on the close outskirts of watching this unfold. We were okay. We weren't necessarily, you know, a part of anything that he was doing necessarily, but we were trying to get some information out. And that's why we hit it off at Dimensions of Disclosure. And he had talked about in this interview with the gentleman about all this information that he had, but nobody pays attention. Nobody listens. You know, I have this hard drive full of all this data, but people only concerned about waiting for the other person to stop talking so they can start talking. So then the interviewer just goes, okay, interesting, moves on, doesn't ask him what's on the hard drive. So I'm going next to interview him for our project. It's for a documentary called Majestic 12. It's on Amazon. It had Corey Good, David Wilcock, all these folks. This documentary was made about Corey Good and some of these folks that, you know, was centered around these documentaries and these, you know, the Gaia TV show and some of this stuff. But we were actually, if you look at the IMDb credits, Strange Road, before we were Strange Road, we're all on the IMDb credits of that film, dude. And because we were B-Cam and we used audio, my buddy was the DP for just those interviews that were being conducted for the film at Dimensions of Disclosure, because they had all these guys out there. And so, you know, and then I get to interview this gentleman next, and we go through the interview. And then afterwards I go, hey, what about that hard drive? What's on that flash drive? Is there something we can see? He goes, meet me downstairs in 5 minutes. So I'm like, all right, this is weird. So I go downstairs and he said, hey, can you do me a favor? I said, sure. He said, can you give me 5 numbers by the end of the day? And I'm thinking, okay, this Mi'kmaq elder he's a weird guy, but I knew who he was because I had heard him on podcasts, and I wanted to meet him because, he claims that he has these ancient copper scrolls that are 25,000 years old, and the Mi'kmaq elders have been holding on to this, and he's the steward of these ancient scrolls. And I was like, wow, this is I want to meet this guy. I want to interview this guy. So, he says, can you give me seven numbers? And so later that day, I think about my 7 numbers. I go down there, I write them down, give them to him, I give them to his wife, and she opens up this folder, looks at my numbers, looks at something else in the folder, looks over here.
Get some really high quality video of several of the interviews at least, and just kind of being a fly on the wall for me, and just being a hype man. Yeah, Mikey is an incredible dude, and you definitely need to check out his show. His links will be in the show notes. But anyway, thank you again so much for listening to the show and hanging out today. Again, my name is Jeff, and this is, of course, the Strangeology podcast. As always, I like to give a huge thank you out there to all of you who listen to this show. Those of you who download it, share it with friends and family. It helps me out a ton when you do that. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like, comment, and share the video out. It helps so much to boost my episodes, people getting eyes on this stuff, and just growing it to the next level. We recently hit 25,000 subscribers there, and we're hoping to make it to 50,000 next. So it's an ongoing thing, and it really helps out so much when you do that. Strangeology really wouldn't be possible without the support of listeners like you. To any advertisers or companies out there looking to collaborate with the Strangeology podcast, or if you're someone who would like to be considered for an interview on the show, if you're a researcher, an expert, an author, an experiencer, you want to share your story or your theories, your encounters with the strange and unexplained, head on over to strangeology.com/contact, or you can just send an email directly to info@strangeology.com. And just another quick reminder to make sure to follow me over on all of my social media accounts if you're looking for more content from me. In between episodes, I try to be as active as possible. The schedule this summer is going to be a little nuts, but I like to at least put out a few short form factoid videos over on my Instagram, my Facebook, TikTok. I'm also on X, Threads, Substack, and Blue Sky as well, although less so than the first 3. So definitely give me a follow there if you're looking for more content from Strangeology. It's a lot of fun, and we'll see you there. And of course, Strangeology can use all the help it can get, so if you want to support the show and what I do, you can sign up to become a channel member on my YouTube channel for just under $5 a month, which gets you early access to new episodes, as well as access to bonus segments of these podcast episodes that are also ad-free. You gain access to Strangeology Beyond, which are sometimes whole different research topics or extended guest interviews. And I've been working on expanding the back catalog there. We've got about 13 episodes up and 70 something to go. And a big shout out to Alex Dorgan, a longtime supporter, friend of the show, for helping me out with getting all of those video files ripped and exported. And we're going to be working throughout the summer as diligently as possible to get the whole catalog up there. And you can also support the show by signing up to my Patreon, which is at patreon.com/Strangeology. I've got several tiers over there. Higher tiers unlock more perks, like, again, with the YouTube, you get early access to new episodes and long format videos, which are ad-free, and you get access to Strangeology Beyond as well, the members only episode extension. There's also a 30% off permanent merch discount to my shop. Members only merch, shout outs, voting power for topics I cover, behind the scenes bonus content, and more. So if you want to join a growing community of like-minded people who love the strange and unexplained, it's a great place to be. I appreciate the support so much, and the more of it that I get, the more content that I can create for everyone out there and take this thing to the next level. And to those members out there, past and present, you know who you are. Thank you so much for all of your support over these last 5 years. And speaking of merch, don't forget to check out my shop over at strangeology.etsy.com if you're looking to pick up some 40 gear. I've got things on shirts, like t-shirts, tank tops, long sleeves, sweatshirts, and hoodies. I've also got stickers, prints, and more. I recently updated the shop with a number of new sticker designs of the cryptid variety. I've got a number of other ones that I need to get up as I have time to finish up artwork and get things listed, but there's something there for everyone. I've got so much stuff, always adding new things, so definitely check that out. Links will be in the show notes. Also, before I go, just a couple event announcements. August 2nd, I will be in Johnstown, Pennsylvania at Squonkapalooza. This will be my second year vending, so I'll be slinging t-shirts, hanging out. So if you're going to be at that event, if you're in that area, definitely come say hello. I'll have information for that up on the website. I'm also planning on being at the Whitehall Sasquatch Calling Contest and Festival again this year. It'll be my 4th year doing it. It's such a great event, and that happens at the end of September. And again, details will be up on my website events page. So definitely check that out. Maybe I'll be able to fit in one more show this year. I'm not sure, but this has been a lot of stuff going on, as I've mentioned in previous episodes with home renovations and all that. So have had a very busy schedule and haven't been able to get away as often as we'd like, as often as usual. But hopefully next year we can remedy that and I can get out to some more events. So definitely mark those on your calendar, and yeah, it's going to be a good time. All right, well, that's all from me for now for the regular show. Mikey was able to hang out for quite a while longer to talk about more high strangeness in Ohio, weird theories, talking to strange people, all this stuff. Mikey is such an encyclopedia for all of this stuff, and you're gonna love it. So members, stick with me after this short break, and for everyone else, as I always say, until the next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and keep it strange. All right, welcome back, members, to your exclusive portion of the show, Strangeology Beyond. Today's episode with our guest, Mikey Liesner.